I'm Monica Bradford from scrapinspired.com, and this is Inspiration to Creation. I'm inspired by so many things in my life every day, and I love finding ways to incorporate that inspiration into my scrapbooking. Today I want to share with you how I was inspired by a display at Target. I love walking up and down the aisles of Target. I love all their displays and often think that their things are so cute. But for some reason on this day, my scrappy senses started going off, and I realized that this display was perfect inspiration for a scrapbook layout. I love the lamp. I love the colors. I like it combined with the shiny silver. I like the chevron, which is a very popular trend right now. But I also loved the clock. I liked the bright color around the edge of the clock with the white tone-on-tone in the middle. And I knew that I could figure out a way to turn this display into a scrapbook page. I'm going to show you how I took that inspiration and incorporated it onto a scrapbook page all about our trip to Disney World. So let's get started. I always like to pull more supplies than I'm probably going to use, but it gives me a place to get started. Now, if I'm going to take my inspiration literally, especially that lamp, I might use a gray background like this. It actually has a bit of a shimmer to it, but it's a nice gray background and it's got a raised dot on it. I also thought about using this classic calico from Studio Calico. It's got a really subtle, I don't know if you can see it, let's see if I can get it up there, gray and white chevron on the background. And that kind of takes another take on that lamp. Or I could do this Studio Calico chevron, which is not as subtle, more like a herringbone actually, but it still has that chevron look. Or I have also thought about taking that turquoise and using this paper by Amy Tan from the Sketchbook collection. So I'm not exactly sure which of those I'm going to use. I'll have to kind of see as I start playing around which one feels right as the background. One thing I do know is I want to take the idea of those clocks and the white tone-on-tone for my journaling block. So I know I'm going to use this white cardstock for my journaling block along with these white foam thickers from Amy Tangerine. So that gives that same look as the clock where you had the depth of the numbers on top, white numbers on top of the white background. So I'm going to do the same thing in my journaling block with these white letters on top of a white background. So I made these two photo strips using a digital template from the Lily Pad and Designs by Lily. I have a couple pictures from each day of our trip, and I'm just going to use these photo strips, and this will be more just like an overview layout of our trip to go in our regular scrapbook, and then I'll make an entire mini album with a lot more details about our trip. This is just like a highlights page. Now I want to mimic that chevron look in lots of different colors that you saw on the lamp. I'm going to use this punch by EK Success. It's the zigzag punch. And I want to have lots of different colored papers. So I pulled several from my stash. I've got this yellow paper from Amy Tangerine. It's got a chevron border on it already, so I might use it as a larger piece of pattern paper and not cut it into strips, but I'm probably going to use that. And then I pulled a variety of colors that kind of reminded me of that lovely lamp. I've got some red. It does have a little bit, let's see if I can get it close enough. It has a little tiny white line on it, very subtle. I've got some orange that's got a nice orange dot. Just some plain green paper. I've got a turquoise. Again, it's got a really subtle pattern, kind of looks like linen. And then a navy dot. This is from the Dots and Stripes collection by Echo Park. And then I wanted to get some other kind of embellishments. I might pull more later, but here's a few I'm looking at. I liked this is from Jelly Bean Soup. It's their vacation labels, and I liked this one that just says date. Have a few flare buttons I pulled. They're both from Ormolu, and they're both from the Fact or Fiction collection. I love the all smiles. I love the camera. I like the what's the story. But I also like This Is It, you know, like we're finally at Disney. So I may use that one. Those are all possibilities. I have these 10 pins from October Afternoon, and I might use the airplane. Not for sure. I might save that for my mini album when I create my mini album about this trip, so I'm not sure on that one if I'll use it or not. I love these wood banners. They are by My Mind's Eye. And they just say things like, oh, happy day, best day ever, splendid, great day, celebrate. Any of those would work for this layout, so I might pull in one of those. I have some Amy Tangerine cardstock pieces from her sketchbook collection. I loved these two little tickets, admit one, admit two. I loved this lovely camera. Not sure, but I might pull in some of those. And then I also have the sticker book from the sketchbook collection. I loved this chevron sticker. There's several in here. So those are my supplies I'm going to pull from to get started, and let's see how this layout comes together. Of all the paper choices I pulled, I'm really drawn to the dark gray, especially with that yellow chevron. And I think I want to use those as the background. When you balance it with a bit of white for the journaling block, I think it makes a nice combination. So I'm just going to trim down this yellow paper. It's 11 inches wide and 10 inches tall. And I really like that it's not a perfect square. I like the way that looks. Now that I have my photos kind of laid out where they're going to go, I want to figure out how big I need to make my journaling block. I do have a lot of journaling for this layout, so I want to make sure that I have enough space and that I have enough height for my white letter stickers that I'm going to be using later on. Now that I've got that cut, I'm ready to get started pulling more pieces together. One of my very favorite parts of the inspiration was that lamp. I loved all the different colored zigzags. Now on the lamp they were different widths, different colors, and they kind of mixed all together. And I want to recreate something similar. Now I'm using the border punch to punch a bunch of strips in different colors, but I want them to be different lengths and not all lined up. So I'm kind of cutting and layering them and trying to find the best placement for each of them. Now that I'm seeing them against the yellow, I'm just not quite sure it's exactly the look I was going for. And that makes that white block, journaling block, seem almost out of place and like it doesn't tie in. So I decided to go ahead and pull back out some of that Studio Calico chevron paper and just take a look and see if I might want to change things up. That's why I haven't stuck anything down yet, so that I can kind of play around with it. And that's also why I pull extra pieces of paper as I go, so I can start to mess around and see if I like things better in a different way or with a different background, different pattern paper. And so I'm kind of playing with that now. But I felt like that was too much white, and so I wanted to look around and see what else I could come up with. I decided to cut a tall strip of the Studio Calico pattern paper and add it onto the yellow and the dark gray. So I'm measuring to figure out what size I need, and right as I started to cut I realized nope, I needed to turn the paper and make the zigzag go the same direction as the big yellow zigzag. I didn't want them to be competing with one another. And that one little change was exactly what I needed. And once I put the pictures on there, I knew I had the design that I was going to work with. Now in the inspiration, the clock had a bright, colorful border around all that white. So I wanted to do the same thing on my journal block. At first I thought I could use turquoise washi tape, and I think it would have looked excellent, except that my washi tape was striped. And with all that zigzag, it was just becoming too many lines, and I didn't really like how it looked. So I tried it out, but then I took it back off and decided to just back my journaling block with a bit of teal cardstock, and that worked perfectly. Now that I've got all the main pieces figured out, it's time to start adhering everything down. Just use my tape runner, give the corners some adhesive, and get it all stuck so that I can start to embellish. Now it's time to start arranging all those zigzags. I started cutting my colors in different lengths and just laying them on the page, trying to figure out where they would go best. I didn't want them to line up. I wanted them to feel kind of scattered the same way the lamp did. I began to notice that
it felt like I needed some in the middle where the photos were. So I decided to try just a few and see if I liked the way it looked with some of those zigzags peeking out from behind the photos. And I really liked how that ended up looking. So I started gluing those zigzags on. To do detail work like this, I usually use my tweezers and my zig glue pen, and it works great. When I took a look at my photos on top of the zigzags, I noticed that they just didn't stand out quite enough. One thing I do often with photos is to give them a mat to give them more presence, but that wasn't going to work on this layout. So I decided to try giving them a little bit more dimension. And once I held them up off the page just a little bit, I saw that the shadow that was created gave them exactly the dimension I needed. I wanted pop dots on all four corners and in the middle so that they would be able to hold up the full photo strip, but the photo strips were so thin that I wouldn't have been able to fit two full pop dots side by side. But by using my Tim Holtz scissors, I was able to trim some of the dots in half, and it worked perfectly. I bet you've been wondering how I was going to use those letter stickers on my journaling block. Well, we were gone for a whole week, and this layout documents our entire trip. So I wanted to use the letter stickers to show each day of the week. I love the flare buttons, and I know I want to use them. I started with the This Is It because that's for sure going on my page, and I wanted to use the camera too. I thought maybe a triangle would work, but I decided not. I also thought about using the date sticker with the flare button or the wood flag. I loved the wood flag, but I just couldn't really figure out where to put it. I am so in love with these wood veneer people by Studio Calico. And since this was our first family trip, I thought it would be fun to use the four little people somewhere on the layout. And that top right corner was just begging for something. So I decided that might be a good place to put my four people. But they really needed a frame of some kind, something to hold them together. So I decided to pull a little bit more of that turquoise that I used to back my journal block and punch a piece of it. At first I thought I could do it up and down, but then they didn't really fit, and so I tried putting it sideways, but that didn't really look right either. So I decided it was definitely going to go up and down, but I still needed something to help hold all four of the people because that piece only held two. I thought maybe a half circle in another color would work to give some width to this little layered area. And I tried it, but it just didn't look right. I didn't like it. And then I remember those tickets that I had pulled from at the beginning, and even though they didn't work, I knew I had a ticket punch and thought I could maybe punch 4 tickets to house each of the people. Now that I know I'm putting those wooden people up in the top corner, I'd like to bring some wood into the other points of the embellishment triangle. So I tried bringing back on that pennant and adding the button to it, thinking that together they might work. And then I added a couple of wooden hearts down by the heart flare button, but it still didn't feel right. So I went ahead and pulled those off, and I'll figure out something else. I'm going to go ahead and add on the framing at the top for that embellishment cluster and the tickets, and then I need to decide how to put my people. At first I thought I would do father, mother, and 2 children, but then I realized if I put the children in the middle, I would have space for a little word stamp. Before I stamp directly on my page, I need to decide what color of ink I want to use. So I pulled a gray and a navy and practiced stamping both of those on just a scrap piece of that same pattern paper. I decided I liked the navy best, so I went ahead and used that one on the layout. And then I used my zig glue pen once again to glue on each of the wood veneer people. For my journaling, I just noted which park we went to each day and a few favorite memories from each day of our trip. I am still trying to figure out where to put this flag pennant. I'd really like it compared with I like it with that flare button, but I just don't like it in that space, and I'm not sure what else to do with it. I've tried moving it to several different locations, and it's just not really working for me. So I think I'm going to try putting on the title and see if adding the title block helps me figure out where each of these embellishments need to go. I was originally thinking I would put the title up at that top corner, but on top of all those zigzags, it just didn't stand out enough. And I had this big open space down underneath the journaling block, so I decided to put it down there. And I really liked the way it came together down there, especially with that camera flare at the end. I give up. That flag pennant is just not going to work, so I'm just going to take it off. And moving that little flare button over to the side was the perfect answer. I still get to include it, even though I don't have any other wood anywhere else on the page. And there you have it, my completed Disney overview layout. And now it's your turn. Create a layout inspired by my layout, inspired by the Target display, or even inspired by a display in your favorite store, and then link it in the blog post below so that we can all share the inspiration.
Thank you for joining me for Inspiration to Creation. I'm Monica Bradford, and until we meet again, I hope you find time to scrap inspired.